It's really strong, right? And so we have two receivers here regularly. We have Harry Douglas and we have Hawk. Yep. He said this, and I got a hold of it the day I lost Harry. So I've been waiting all week to get a receiver in to look at the tape. Is Troy right?
He's right. The West Coast offense is very meticulous, it's very detailed, it's very precise, and they're not doing that. And that is a effort problem, that is a design problem, and that's an execution problem. Right here, you have a third down against the Lions. You have an orbit motion from CD. The whole point of this is to spread the defense and take that attention away. If CD jogs this, it makes a muddy picture for Dak Prescott in the middle of the field. Not only that, they know you're not getting the ball. Then up top, you have Tolbert, who is breaking down for 3 yards and essentially tipping off to the safety what's going on. Here's a design issue. You have a motion across formation into a bunch, and you have him as the first release. So every other receiver has to wait. So it seems like it's low effort, but the reality is it's hard to get speed off of that kind of start. And then from a detail perspective up top, your tight end has a chip into an out route. He chips, and then he goes inside, essentially cutting off the actual target of the play. This is an issue from the players, it's an issue for the coaches, and it's an issue of the design and execution of an offense that is very, very meticulous.
Boy, am I glad that I got you in here because, I mean, I'm not qualified to speak on this. I can't watch that tape and see the things you just did. So, but you would assume Troy Aikman knows what he's talking about because he's in the Hall of Fame and is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Well, Jerry Jones has had himself quite a week. We played you earlier this morning the sound about him saying, well, we really couldn't use Derrick Henry. He wouldn't be as good in our offense. He also had some comments talking about his coaches. And he was quite critical of Mike McCarthy and others when he was talking about this yesterday. Listen.
The types of things that we all think we should be looking at is, well, we're designing bad plays or we're designing bad concepts. The facts are that there's some of that, but there's also some of execution. There's some of the talent. I like our talent. I really do like our talent. I like our young talent. But young talent has a few more mistakes associated with it than if you are dealing with a veteran player.
Jerry just running that bus all over McCarthy right now. He's just backing it up. He really
likes the talent, though.
He loves the talent.
It felt like I remember when I didn't do the reading before I had to go to school the next day, and then they asked me a question, and I'm just BSing around all the time. Because that's what it feels like. It's like he doesn't exactly know what to say, so he's like design, execution. He's saying buzzwords.
It sounds like he's listening to Hawk and you guys break down why his team's bad, and he's like, exactly.
Well, he's not listening to the part that he needs to hear.
Rewind it to the beginning of the show. We're putting it to you.
But you know what can I say? Because I covered that Lions Cowboys debacle, and standing there in Dak's press conference, what perked my ears was Dak saying, guys have to practice harder. And he said it starts with being on the field. It starts with how you spend your time outside of the facility. It starts with guys looking in the mirror. It starts with, are you studying the game? Are you putting yourself in situations in the moment to be ready, to be great? And I've heard him say that a few times this season. So then when you have Troy, to Hawk's point, breaking down how lack of effort, lack of execution, there are deeper problems here, and Dak is not calling people out by name. He's saying it starts with me, but you get the feeling within that locker room, a lot of stuff that needs to be happening is not.
And I hope that's the case, because it has to start somewhere. Because what Dak is talking about is accountability.
Right.
And the issue is when you don't have accountability from the top, it permeates all the way down the organization. So he's probably right. If we went and watched the practices, they're probably not practicing to the level of a team that needs must-wins at this point in the season. They're probably not coaching to that level. And they're also not taking responsibility for what's going on the field, the same way the owner is not taking responsibility for his issues from a talent perspective, what's not there for the run game.
Here's the thing. I can't analyze the tape that Hawk just gave us and say that this is bad because of the bunch formation. I can't do any, but here's what I can say, or I can see, that their defense is getting their behinds kicked every single week by teams that can run the ball. They are getting humiliated, and that is not schemes, that's not designs. Rex will sit up here and yell, "Try something different, Mike Zimmer." When the line of scrimmage moves 5 yards on every single play, just look, where is a blue shirt? Is that scheme? Is that execution? Or is that they don't have good enough players to stand up against this? And the word is out. Every team knows you can do it. San Francisco is going to run the ball for 250 yards against them.
They had issues with stopping the run last year.
So it could be it could be somewhat scheme and execution, but it could also go back to the practice thing. And the problem with the practice and practicing good habits is when the ownership, the leader of the organization, starts talking about the issues and pointing at coaches and pointing at other people, like it's hard to instill that. But I do think that what they should do, to Rex's point, is you got to all-out blitz. Like you have to turn to a high variance style of play where you're either going to give up an 80-yard touchdown or cause a sack fumble. Because lining up and going mano-a-mano, we are finding out that y'all can't do that. You just can't.
And, but part of the issues, too, are, and they weren't shown on that tape, but we've shown them almost every week, is they take the easy way. You know, defensive linemen will, they'll start the insert correctly, and then they'll try to backdoor, like swim backside, or they'll get outside of their gap, which causes the linebacker to be wrong. And it's like each of them take their turn, whether it's the front defensive line, the linebackers, or even the defensive backs. Everybody takes a turn, and this included when Parsons was playing, right? This is included when they were all healthy. At some point, someone on their team has to say, hey, man, this is what we have to do. And whether it's varying up their defenses, blitz in the house, risk it all, risk reward, all the different conversations. But at some point, it does become about, I'm not going to get driven back 5 yards. Like, I'm going to bull my neck. I'm not going to have it. I'm going to grab guys. Call me for a defensive holding every play. Like, I can literally remember sitting in meetings and John Tierlink, our defense, telling those guys, make them call holding. Will we take it? Sure. And is it always? No, but we're going to do it. And we're going to do it every play until they throw a flag every play. Because right now, it's like they're playing good guy football.
That Troy Aikman gave last week, talking about a lot of things regarding the current state of the Cowboys. What you're going to hear here was some particularly strong criticism of the Cowboys wide receivers. And then that was brought up to Mike McCarthy, who responded. We'll hear them both.
I think they run terrible routes, and I've thought that beyond this year. I think CeeDee's got to improve in his route running. And as a quarterback, if you're not certain where guys are going to be consistently, it's hard to play the position. That's what I see. I see guys lazy coming off the line of scrimmage, and I'm not speaking for Dak. Dak may say, hey, I think everything's amazing, but as a former quarterback watching it, it's got to get a lot better.
They don't carry any weight with me because, I watch all the tape. I get to go to the meetings. I'm at practice. I'm part of the games. So I have a clear understanding of what, where, and in Troy's statement in particular. I don't agree with the word selection, but there is definitely need for improvement in every position. Not just one position that he commented on.
So that's the right answer for Mike McCarthy.
For sure.
What's he going to say? Oh, Troy's absolutely right. Our routes are awful.
Glad somebody finally said it.
I can't even watch it. But and we'll bring this up when we have Hawk in here tomorrow. I wanted one of our receivers, he or Harry Douglas or both, to really look at the tape, so we'll get more deeply into it. But the general idea that the Cowboys don't look right on offense, I think is reasonable. I mean, Troy sees it. He's the right person to say it. But I think to some degree we all see it, right?
100%. I mean, you're talking about an offense that is struggling. We talk about their defense all the time, but their offense isn't good. And we had, they pay CeeDee Lamb, they pay Dak Prescott. You think they're going to have, and they've been one of the top offenses in the league the past 3 or 4 years. So you had expectation. There may be a drop-off, but not to this degree. And they struggle in all phases of the game. I will say this about quarterback play because I played with Peyton Manning for 13 years and Aaron Rodgers for a year. What Troy is saying, I'm not trying to speak on CeeDee or any of the receivers, but what Troy is saying about the placement of receivers is vital. And it's not just are they in the right spot, it's are they in the right spot at the right time? Because a quarterback has to go through everything. The drops, the set, where his final foot hits, is he ready to throw? So all of those things are enormous. And to the degree that Peyton Manning would go run routes for the receivers to show them exactly what he was trying to get done. And I think that is what Troy is kind of getting to.
Coming off the ball hard is one of the things that he brought up, and that's important also because you have tenths of a second to get rid of the ball. Every little bit counts, and your route is run based on, from a defensive back's perspective, is we start by covering the go first. If you come off the ball lazy, I'm sitting down.
Yep.
I'm not respecting the go. It gives the pass rush, less time to get, or gives them more time to get there because you're not yet in your route. So if these are things that Troy is seeing, that can trickle down to impact the rest of the offense, especially when you don't have an all-pro offensive line or a great rushing attack. To the point where people say this team doesn't have an offensive identity, by that they mean they don't know what they do well. Like, they used to be a team that Dak would eat you alive in the middle of the field in the seams, and then everything would branch out from that. Prior to that, they were a run-first team. Everything would branch out from that. Right now, you look at this team, and you're like, I don't know what they do well. Sometimes they get lucky, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the last game they won this one in Pittsburgh, they needed a 4th down conversion at the very end, right? Or else they lose that game and they're sitting there at 2-4. I think, look, they have some young guys on offense, right? 2 starters on the offensive line that are rookies. You know, Tolbert is still kind of coming, right? Like, that establishment-wise, they have CeeDee Lamb, they have Dak Prescott, they have Jake Ferguson, the tight end. Those guys have to be elite right now because everything else is they're figuring out what else they have. There is no run game at all, and who is with Brandon Cooks sidelined? Like, who are the other receivers?
It felt like Troy was speaking specifically to CeeDee Lamb.
Yes,
I agree with that.
And I think that's right? Like, you have to be the guy. Like, you're getting paid to be the guy, right? And everybody else is still sort of in progress.
So sometimes, and I don't always love this, but I think it is worth pointing out that sometimes, particularly early in a season, people will say that point differential is a better way of judging how good a team is than one-loss record, right? You win some games because the ball bounces your way there. And the Cowboys are 3-3, which would suggest, okay, they're doing okay. But their point differential is minus 52. I mean, you know.
When they lose hard.
That's my point. They're non-competitive in some of these games against better teams. Non-competitive. And that, I think there is an element of what Troy is saying. Again, I defer to him 1,000% because he's one of the greatest players ever, and I just watch. But you can see it. Like, you can see they don't seem to be playing with that same kind of crispness that the really good teams do.
I think you said this even at the beginning of the season. They got older and more expensive as an offense, and
worse and more expensive.
And the problem is that you're depending on 2 guys at positions that without a run game can't be nearly as effective as they have been in the past.